Are you struggling to create an intentional headspace? Unable to connect deeper with yourself? Come, and together, let's address the elephant in the room. I'm your host, Sinead Roche, and this is the Uncomfortable Podcast. Okay, so I'm going to list some situations out for you guys, and you're going to let yourselves know if you guys have ever felt this way. So, situation number one, right? Say, for example, you are friends with people who don't necessarily have the same values as you, and the way you want to be seen is not being taken kind of seriously. And what I mean by that is that you've made it clear to them that in some instances you kind of feel left out, you kind of feel like, okay, this is not something you want to do necessarily, in certain situations, and you feel like they're just not taking you really into consideration when they do certain things, right? Now, with that said, you've tried multiple times kind of to tell them, hey, I feel this type of way. Is there anything we can do to change this, right? You've tried to compromise as well, right? But nothing is kind of working out. And because you want to be next to them so badly and you kind of still want to keep these friendships, you're practically begging for them, in a sense, to still be around you, even though you know it's not what's best for you. Next situation. Let's say you're in a relationship, right? And they are constantly making you feel bad. And by that, I don't mean they necessarily have to directly put you down, but their actions are explaining to you that like they don't really care. And then you'll ask them, do you even care? But it's kind of not showing that they actually care. And your emotional needs are perhaps not being met. And you've tried having this conversation multiple times, but their actions aren't changing. You're trying to compromise more and more. But again, it's still the same, right? Once again, you feel bad for yourself, but yet you still want to be around them. Now, situation three. Say you're in a job, and this job was great, you wanted it at first, right? But now all of a sudden, the job is just kind of like, it's draining you, it's making you miserable, it's infecting your other parts of your life, right? And you feel like you still have to continue it. You still feel like you have no other options. And before I say anything else, I want to preface that I understand some people have monetary needs ahead of their emotional needs in some cases, especially when it comes to, the economy and everything like that, which is completely understandable. It's completely understandable if you are sometimes in a job that you know is not necessarily the best for you, but like you still have to continue on with it because you see no other options right now, right? But for those of us who necessarily don't always have to have such an monetary like dependency on this job, right? And you know you're in a bad place. You don't like how your coworkers make you feel all the time. You've tried self-regulating. You don't like how your bosses talk to you. You've tried to talk to HR. You've tried to discuss many different things, try to come up with compromises, try to change your actions, try to change how you think, right? Nothing has changed, and yet you're still choosing to be there. Now, option four, not option four, but situation four. Now, say someone has hurt you in the past, right? But now you kind of want to move on from that, but you don't take any actions to do so, right? So you continue to walk around with the hurt that you have. You don't deal with it, right? Because you don't want to let go of it. Because maybe letting go of it means that you're also letting go of the memories that have caused that pain, which have caused the fact that you might have become so disappointed in such and such person, right? So these are all scenarios in which it's kind of obvious that like you kind of need to let go. You need to let go of the friendship, the relationship, perhaps the job, and also the past feelings of hurt. And now when I talk about letting go, I'm not here to tell you that it's easy. I don't think most of the things when I say like, okay, the process is simple, like even having a normal conversation, it's not simple. Like sometimes like you do have to work on this. And same thing goes with letting go. Letting go is not easy and is not for the faint of heart, but it is very necessary. And today I want to talk about the fact that we don't know how to let go, we don't know when to let go, and most importantly, we don't know why we need to let go. So, first of all, what is letting go? I see letting go as the fact that you are letting go an aspect of yourself from the past. It means that you kind of are letting go of a person, memories, or even like a past version of yourself, right? And the reason why you have to let go is because it's no longer serving you to this day. And what I mean by serving you, it's no longer uplifting you, it's no longer encouraging you, it's no longer making you want to put your best foot forward. You constantly might be feeling that like there's too many fluctuations within your emotions, even though you've tried to like regulate yourself and everything like that, but nothing is really changing, right? And so you want to perhaps let go of the situation, let go of the environment, let go of the people who are making you feel all these types of ways, right? But I feel like the main reason why people find it so hard to let go is because, and especially I feel like people who are bent on the fact that they want to become better, right? Letting go means sometimes that you have to acknowledge the fact that you let something continue on for so long and admit to yourself that you sometimes don't want the best for yourself. And people who are like myself, like, I don't know, I always say to myself, yeah, I want to do the best for myself financially, emotionally, physically, spiritually, religiously, all these things. I kind of continuously want to improve. Sometimes when we actually admit to ourselves that, like, okay, we have to let go of the situation, let go of this friendship in order to continue to move forward in the direction that is kind of meant for us. It's hard to deal with the fact that sometimes we've let it go on for so long, even though we know it was never that good for us, because that means admitting that we don't want the best for ourselves when we look at this direct like example of us literally not doing what's best for ourselves, because we have an attachment maybe to the dopamine that comes with being in these places, maybe because of the trust levels that we have with these people, maybe because of the familiarity of the situation, things like this, which is keeping us from moving forward. And sometimes when we have to actually reflect and think about the fact that we have prioritized the sense of familiarity or the sense of trust, safety, knowing, right? Instead of like actually doing what's best for ourselves, it's kind of hard to admit that, because it's like, damn, sometimes I actually don't want what's best for me because I'm actually not doing that. And that's okay, because it is hard sometimes to let go of things. It is hard to do some of the things that you need to in order to become uncomfortable while you're going through like your growing pains of change. Which is why I want to talk to you first of all. Why is it that some of us like don't let go of things? You know, it has to do with our self-worth. Sometimes we have low self-worth, we don't have self-love, we don't understand our value. These three things are so important because it all has to do with like understanding yourself and understanding when it's time to move on. Then of course there's past traumas. You know, some people like they've always grown up in situations that are very chaotic. So even now that they've recognized that these are places where they cannot grow anymore or that they're not safe in, because it's so familiar to them and because it's just a place of safety, they continue to remain there, right? Then there are the people who are afraid of change, right? Ah, yeah, no one really likes change. I don't like change. I don't even like change sometimes when it's like good for me, because that means adapting in a sense. And I like my routines. I like doing the things that I do on a daily basis. I like what's it called? I like drinking my morning coffee, you know, because that gets me up in the day. And then realizing that sometimes I had to let go of my coffee because it might be impacting my like anxiety levels, like that's a hard change to let go of, you know? And for those of us who have the vice of coffee, that's hard. But that's just like a small example. But like in reality, what I mean by that is like also just like being afraid of the fact that like sometimes you won't be talking to the same people on a regular basis anymore. That is part of being afraid of change. And then another reason why some of us are not able to let go is because we might be in the process of doing so, but we are in the process of grief, because letting go is grief in a sense. Like you are losing something, you are losing someone, you are losing a part of yourself potentially, right? So you might be stuck in the process of grief, such as like in the parts of denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and you can go all the way to the acceptance that you've let these people go, or that you've quit your job, stuff like this, and then you'll go all the way back to anger, right? And that's where this comes in, that this is a process, this is a continuous loop. This isn't just something that like, oh, I've said that I want to let this go, so I'm just gonna let it go very easily. No. So give yourself a break when it comes to letting things go. Now, let's go to when we need to let go of things. Like I said, letting go is it is a grief process, right? You are grieving for the fact that you no longer get to keep something around, like, because you know it's no longer in your best interest to do so. But I feel like being able to rationalize, and I know we're irrational people, but like I feel like being able to rationalize like the reasons why might help us to endure the process a bit more. I feel like it's kind of like going no contact with an ex, like you don't like the process, but like rationally it makes sense, to keep through it, and to push through like the instant hurt emotions, the missing them, all these things. So, when is it time to let go? Sometimes it's time to let go when our emotions are constantly fluctuating, because this person or this situation has become like an attachment to us. It can even be like an attachment to the feeling of success. You know, sometimes people like on a daily basis, like you'll feel like, okay, was I successful today rather than was I productive? And so they can become like really driven and attached to the idea that like they have to be successful on this day, right? But when they don't become successful that day, it's kind of like, man, like I've messed up the entire day. The day wasn't even worth anything. And their moods are just like constantly fluctuating because of that. Like they had a high the other day, but now they had such a low because they were kind of attaching their self worth, their productivity, everything to like this idea of success on this daily basis, right? Um, another reason of when you need to understand to let go, is when you've taken note of people's behaviors and you've tried to compromise and you've tried to have conversations, but you really don't see any progress. And that's not to say that these people aren't going through other problems or other situations in life and that you shouldn't give grace and empathize with them. That's not to say that. But it's that what can you kind of tolerate in that sense? Like what's going beyond your boundaries and what's making you kind of feel uncomfortable? What's something you can't give leeway to? And it seems like you are doing that constantly. So when people are kind of crossing your boundaries, it's like, okay, let's stop, let's take a moment, let's breathe, let's have a conversation. But if this conversation and your actions aren't changing and if it's constantly a repetitive conversation we're having, it seems like this is no longer worth my time because you're obviously not respecting the fact that I value this over this. Another reason when you need to let go is when you feel like you have nothing to gain from the situation, the environment, the feelings anymore. We can look at this like in a work perspective. And it's like it is your time to leave. Like I feel like especially like in situations when again, if you have the financial opportunities to do so, like sometimes you shouldn't be staying somewhere for too long, especially if like there's no promotion, potential promotion, but not only that, like you just feel like it's constant repetitive work, and if something that you value is impacting, like having an impact on something, and you feel like your job is no longer allowing you to do so, but because it's routine to you and it's just normal and it's easy, but you also want to kind of again continue to improve, and it might be time to let go. Another reason may be when we keep looking to the past memories and thinking about someone's potential, but we're seeing no change. So, what I mean by that is that the reason you keep a person around might be the fact that you keep looking back to the past. Okay, this person did this though for me like a few months ago, or this person has all this potential, like because they're a hardworking person, I can really see them doing this. Because they care about like I don't know their siblings or something like this. I can really see them caring about like our kids. I don't know, but literally in that sense, like you're putting an attachment on the potential that you could possibly see in that person, right? And again, that's not seeing reality, right? And that may also be another reason when you should be letting go. And as I said before, another reason is when people are just like violating your boundaries. And you're gonna notice it, even if you don't notice it mindfully and consciously, you're gonna notice it because your body's gonna have a response to that. Like for me, I know when people cross my boundaries, I just become like really anxious. And also when I see people like who exemplify values that are not of my own, which is not a bad thing, but like when it's clearly going against something that I strongly believe in, I get kind of turned off in the sense that like I shut down completely. So like if I don't want to talk to you, you're gonna notice I don't want to talk to you in that sense, because like I'm already kind of noticing like this is not gonna work out because these kind of behaviors, I can't really tolerate that in my space, you know? And that's very okay. Again, this doesn't mean that the people we're letting go of are necessarily bad, or that like, oh, we should hate them or something like this, or that this means that we can't love them any further or we can't support them. We can do all these things. Like, I don't have to hate a person to let them go. I can still support a person from afar, you know? Like, there are some friendships that I've had to let go that it's basically like, I love you from a distance, but what you're doing right now, it's not for me. I've had a conversation with you. That's one of the biggest things I want to emphasize. Have a conversation if you can, like in order to see if there's compromise available. But if you already decided in your own that like this is not it for you, that's okay just to walk away, right? But going back to the situation, like I've seen that your values are not of my own, or like the time that you're going through, like I can't be there for you in that moment, but I'm here to support you from afar. That doesn't mean that the love and the care stops or anything like that. It just means that the frequency that we see each other or that we're around each other, it minimizes. And that's not a bad thing. Now, what does letting go look like? You know, because I think that's really difficult for us. We can all say that like we've noticed when like potentially you have noticed when to let go of some things, right? But what does it actively look like? And I really want to get into the habit of talking about like actively doing something, even if it's just like a mental change, right? Rather than just sitting and like hoping, okay, yeah, made my mind up. Do they know that? Probably not, you know? So maybe let me show that. And so let's look at that from a job perspective. If perhaps like you're ready to let go of your job, maybe it's time to work on the resignation letter. Maybe it's time to start looking for other positions. And that even goes for people who are financially dependent on that job at the moment. What if we put some extra time somewhere else? If we have the availability and the capacity, I want to make that very clear. If we have the availability and the capacity, if we have the availability and the capacity, why don't we start looking on Job Indeed or LinkedIn? And I know it's a very difficult time there, but still, like that's actively trying to already distance ourselves from the job and trying to make ourselves less dependent on it. Then let's look at friendships or relationships in a sense. Now, I'm not gonna say that like when you let go of a person, like it's always gonna be easy to have a conversation. And I think, especially for friendships, I don't know, like friendships are very different from relationships in the sense that with friends, you're not seeing them like every single day. I don't know if that makes sense, but like even if you are, you can use your life as an excuse. You can say that you're busy, like, because that's the thing. If people want to, they will. Like, if you want to make time for something, you will make time for something. So, how about you just stop making as much time for people? Again, these are not bad people. It's just like you want to start to let go. And I know it's sad, and I know you're gonna go through like, why can't these people be better? Or like, why is it that they just like didn't listen to me when I was saying all of this, right? But again, you've tried. You've tried to make compromises and stuff like this. You don't see any difference. So like now let's move a bit differently ourselves, which means let's minimize the contact they have to us. Let's minimize the access they have to us. So if I'm seeing my friend that no longer can really be that close with, I'm just gonna say hi, you know, ask how she's doing, but let's not get too deep into it. Let's even use a phone call as an excuse. And I know that might be bad because we're not directly telling people, hey, listen, but it's not gonna work for every person. Like, not every person is gonna be able to hear like, hey, listen, this is not working out for me right now. Let's how about we can reconvene this friendship at a different time? And that's very much okay. Like, letting go of someone is not to hurt the other person, it is to help yourself. Don't think of it as like other people are, what's it called, are necessarily getting hurt by this, because also like in most of the situations where like it's time for you to let go, I feel like you're gonna realize that like once you stop putting effort in, there's not much effort coming from the other side to kind of restart that friendship in a sense. Now, another way to kind of like actively let go is to make a conscious effort to release something that has been hurtful, which means like no longer holding on to negative thoughts, patterns, anger, and resentment or pain. And that means sometimes you stop beating yourself up about the past. That could also just look like you're on like a negative emotion and stuff like this. And yes, this takes a lot of, I feel like, a lot of energy just to constantly be like aware of your thoughts. But I think it's worth it because like what we think internally about ourselves, like we do put that out into the world. We do show people how much like we value this or that. We do show people like when we're hurt and when we're feeling great and everything like this. So it's kind of about the fact that like you don't want to continue to like revisit the emotions like or the thoughts so often that they're still attached to the current version of you. And that's what I mean. Like sometimes like we're holding on to negative emotions from the past. Like I could be hurt like holding on to, I don't know, like just betrayal, the feeling of betrayal. But and that could have happened like months ago. I could have been betrayed months ago, right? But the person who I am now, I don't want to continue to hold that in. So what that looks like is literally when the thoughts of those are coming up, I'm gonna be like, yeah, but I'm good right now. Like I'm doing great. I'm bringing myself back to the present. I'm bringing myself to the future because I can't change the past. But I know who I am. I know that what that person did perhaps was not the best, and we've gone through the emotions of that. But right now I'm in the present, and I'm not bringing who I was in the past with me. I'm not bringing the emotions that have hurt me in the past with me and walking with those throughout life. Then, what's it called? Especially for those people who are all about like, when I was talking about how like when to let go and knowing that like you just keep looking at the memories and you keep looking at the potential of a person or of a situation, an environment, anything like this. Journal, write down all the potential that you thought this person has, like everything. And I want you to notice, like, also write down all your emotions, like the emotions that you've actually experienced and the reality of that. Look at them, right? And I want you to remember that these emotions, these are the reality. This is just potential. There's a huge difference. And one big thing is you cannot force someone to realize their potential if they do not want to. Okay? And that sucks. Because it's like you want to help someone improve, you want to better someone, but they don't want to. And that's okay. Once again, we can leave someone else on their journey and be good with ourselves. Yeah. I mean, all in all, letting go, like I've continuously said this, letting go is a grief process. But I feel like once you've gotten to the acceptance stage, and I mean the final acceptance stage, you realize it was all worth it, right? That missing that you had for like those friendships, you don't miss them anymore. You don't, because you're a different version of yourself now. The job that you once had, you might have grown and learned in that moment, but now you're in a different space and you're growing and learning in this moment. Or even through unemployment, you might be growing and learning in those moments because you're like, now I know what I actually want to do. Now I'm making time for the things I want to do, which could gain me an income in the future, hopefully like this one. But I feel like there's so much opportunity when you make time to actually let go of things, because you are now making time for you to take on something else. You now have more capacity for other things that are mattering more to you within the era or whatever version that you are of yourself. Okay, so now that you guys have heard a bit more about why it's important to let go, when to let go, and kind of how to let go, let's get to the little question I have for you. At the end of the day, as I said, letting go is it's a huge process of like doing what is best for yourself. So actually ask yourself, do you want what is best for you? And now when it comes to these situations and where like you potentially have to let go of something, I want you to talk to yourself like the person that you I want you to talk to yourself like it's someone who you love is telling you that situation, and then advise them. Advise yourself like the way you advise someone who you love and who you want the best for, and who you've seen like, oh, this is like really hurting them. take yourself out of the present, like you, and put yourself like looking in, like at an external, looking on from like an external point of view, so that you can have like a better perspective on like, okay, do I actually have to let this go? And am I going to be better for it? At the end of the day, this podcast is about doing better, understanding, okay, how can I get better? And even though like may be uncomfortable processes, let's get around them, let's move with them, okay? So ask yourself, do you want what's best for you? Then it might be time to let go. Thank you guys so much for listening. I'm Sinead Roche.